Hello, and welcome to the Trepa Technologies Security Plus course. My name is Johnny Bandon, and I will be your instructor for this video series. This video will cover Domain 1.5 Threat, Actors, Vectors, and Intelligent Sources. Now let's get started. The first threat actor we will cover is an APT, or an Advanced Persistent Threat. An APT is someone who is highly trained, has plenty of time, and is backed by a nation state. This individual or team is highly skilled in exploiting networks and will typically specialize in their exploits, right? So if they're a team that likes to exploit firewalls or likes to exploit your physical defenses or a physical attack, that's usually how APTs will be sectioned and how they'll be described, right? For the Security Plus exam, you must know that APTs are highly trained. They use their exploits for political reasons because they're usually backed by a government, and they will exist on the network for a long time before being discovered. And the reason I'm just keeping it very simple for these APTs is because the Security Plus exam just wants you to know some of the basics. But if you're to go online and look up some of the famous APT groups, like if you go to the MITRE Attack Frame website, which we will talk about, it'll show you very famous APTs that and where they come from and what they specialize in attacking. And you can kind of use these different frameworks that talk about these APTs to protect your network if it falls into one of these APTs traditionally attacked networks, right? But for the Security Plus exam, we don't deep dive too much into it. Just know that an APT will exist on the network for a long time. They're highly trained. And they're backed by a government or nation state. All right, moving on. So another threat actor we're going to talk about is insider threats. So insider threats pose one of the greatest threats to your enterprise because there's inside knowledge of how the organization runs. Insider threats will have access to your compound. They'll have technical access, stuff that APTs or outside threats do not have access to. So if you have somebody that wants to do damage to your organization and they made it in, right? They got hired on, they can do a lot more damage than someone on the outside. So it's an essential that as a security professional that you notice the signs of an insider threat and you teach your employees through user awareness training the signs of an insider threat. So what are some of the signs? A disgruntled employee, someone being poached by a competitor, someone going through a life-changing event that may be in a desperate situation. For the government, when someone starts to openly disdain the US government publicly, this is also a sign of an insider threat brewing. So some of the signs, right? Disgruntled employee, someone going through a life-changing event like a divorce or someone dying in the family. Now you may say, well, someone's tragedy means they can be an insider threat. Now, we're not robots, we still have that human element in people. Well, for someone going through a life-changing event like a divorce where they may need money quickly, having some insider knowledge that they can sell off to a competitor or an adversary like a nation state like China, Iran, or Russia could prove beneficial to them if they think they could get away with it. So that's why these life-changing events are one of the signs. And then if you're working in the government, someone who has open disdain for US policies, that could be another sign. So what are some prevention? Well, you're not ever going to be able to control someone's actions. If they want to become an insider threat, you can fire them. You can try to dissuade them. But if they're going to do it, they're going to do it, right? But we do have some controls that can prevent them from getting severe damage on our network or causing severe damage. So some of the prevention techniques we have are separation of duties, which will separate workloads so that only one person cannot perform a critical task, like change management or payroll. We have the concept of least privilege, which is only giving a user the same or minimum privileges and access to perform their job. Nothing more, nothing less. If you're a database administrator, you will only get privilege access on that database that you are managing. And then we have mandatory vacations or job rotation. This is a way to detect fraud or unethical behavior by exposing the insider threat while they are gone. So if someone who's been at that job for 5 years finally takes a vacation and you notice the numbers are different now in your accounting systems, you may have just detected fraud being committed by that employee. Now, on to some more threat actors. State actors are politically motivated hackers that are employed by a nation state. A state actor and APT can be the same person or team. However, not all APTs are state actors, since some APT teams are not officially backed by a government or nation state, right? So we put quotation marks against that officially. Some advanced persistent threat actors are not backed by a nation state officially, or they could be even a hacktivist, which we're about to talk about. So a state actor is someone specifically employed by a nation state, and they can also be an APT. A hacktivist is a hacker or a group of hackers or a team, like an APT team, that have moral or ethical causes they care about, and that's the reason they hack. They typically target organizations or big corporations that go against their own personal moral code. And then we have script kiddies, which can be dangerous. They are untrained wannabe hackers with no actual purpose except to cause havoc on a network. And they are untrained, so they use pre built tools and software to try and exploit vulnerabilities on the network. So if you're an organization that doesn't take hardening of systems or your defense in depth serious, a script kiddie can cause a lot of damage on your network. And then we have criminal syndicates. These are just organized crime groups that employ hackers or team of hackers or an APT for financial gain or notoriety in the community. And then we have shadow IT, which is not an official group or organization. It's a term that describes users trying to implement technologies without the approval of actual IT department or the organization. So a shadow IT is not always malicious in nature. It could be an employee trying to find a better process or be more efficient. But a shadow IT can be dangerous. And here's an example why. So this shadow IT will arise when an employee organization doesn't feel like their IT needs are being handled or met or even satisfied. So let's look at this example. Two engineers talk over using Dropbox to share intellectual property. They may just want to get some work done at home. They say, hey, I know this website, Dropbox. Let's put our data or our files in there. We go home, we can download them, and now we can work from home and keep working on this because maybe you have office hours that are set, right? Well, if a competitor finds that intellectual property, because let's face it, these engineers, they're not IT guys. Maybe their Dropbox isn't private. They made it public. If a competitor finds that intellectual property, it can steal it and get their product to market faster. This is just one example of shadow IT and how it can damage the organization. Another example is someone bringing in a switch to add more devices, plugging that switch into the network, and then they cause a spanning tree loop or a broadcast storm, right? It's not malicious in nature, but it's bad for your enterprise because it can cause damage. A way for this never to arise is to make sure you have good engagement with the business and your users, and to make sure that IT is treated as a core competency of the organization so that users' needs are being met. There's a huge movement called the DevOps movement that should be standard in any IT operations nowadays that is a good prevention for shadow IT. And then we have competitors. So these are just corporate adversaries or competitors that will use some sort of espionage to steal intellectual property away from their competitors. The typical goal of this is to get products to market faster or to satisfy their stakeholders or board members. And now let's move on to different threat vectors. So these are the different ways that you get access to attack, right? Or the different planes of attack. So again, threat vectors are different ways an attacker can gain access, exploit, or disrupt your network. So email and social media are vectors that can be used for phishing attempts or, smishing attempts. And in these phishing attempts, malware or malicious scripts can be downloaded, which could give an attacker like an APT team access to your organization's network, where then they can do data exfiltration. Direct access. So this is when an attacker has direct physical access to your network and systems. So that means a threat actor can walk into your building because you don't have a badging system or a front desk. They can install a USB to your computer, install that malicious payload, and walk away. And if you don't have detective measures like CCTV in place, you'll never know what happened. And then we have wireless. Of course, your wireless network is also easily compromised from jamming, from people trying to just disrupt your network, right? Installing evil twins. And then we have removable media. This could be CDs, USBs, DVDs that contain any amount of malware or malicious scripts that could be potentially plugged into your system and network. And now you've just infected your system, causing a cybersecurity incident. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for Domain 1.5. Stay tuned for our next video. We're going to go over Domain 1.6, different types of vulnerabilities. Thank you for viewing.